feel like I should be talking like, this is the movie phone, press 1 to see, no. Waldeboro's Budget Committee meeting. I think it's something like I do. There you go, you were live.
Okay. Make a motion to come out of executive session.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? All right, back to the chief. Would you like to go through your budget now?
Yes, all right. So moving on from what we just discussed on the first biggest increase is patrolman pay. Which we've already discussed. Moving on from that, the only other real increase I put in here was for part-time employees. I put that to $32.50. The reason why I put that to $32.50 is because I would like to pay my part-time certified guys $30 an hour and my full-time certified part-time guys $35, because it's when my full-time certified part-time guys work, they can do more. It's less of a liability, less of a worry. So I'd like to give them incentive to come work more. And I have 2 full-time certified part-timers. So I just want to incentivize them to work more to help out. And that's why, and we're not paying them benefits. So that's why I suggest such an increase.
Bill, can you just explain what the full-time?
Yeah, so-
Part-timer is?
So part-time certified is, they don't go through the full 18-week academy.
Okay.
So it's, they have limitations to what they can do, like they can't investigate, deaths, aggravated assaults, motor vehicle accidents with injuries. They can't do car chases and stuff like that.
All right, thank you, John. You all set?
I was asked the same question.
And I think my only increases in here were pay rates. So there's another note in here that I actually went down on some of my expenses because I had an opportunity this year to buy a whole pallet of ammunition at 2010 prices. And I had a call into my current suppliers, like, yeah, expect 20 to 25% increases on ammo. So I jumped all over that ammunition this year. It should last me out, an estimate 4, 5, 6 years, maybe it will last. I'm still gonna have to buy some ammunition, so that's why I left the line in here, because I only bought handgun ammunition. I'm still gonna have to buy ammunition, and Doogie ammunition has to be rotated in and out. So I did leave some in that line.
Let me guess, Amerstone Hardware?
Yep.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, we all did.
Pulled in, but whole pallet.
Yeah, they were more than happy to get rid of it.
Yeah.
They accidentally ordered 25 pallets, I guess.
Yeah, big time.
And then they couldn't ship it back. Oops, someone get in trouble.
And the other increases were just in building services, which, as you guys know, that he doesn't really control a lot of that, but that's where the utilities and the buildings and grounds expense came from. And that was because we wanted to split those out, and that's at 26% of the building costs and utility cost.
Have any questions about any of this increases? Or there was not many there.
No, that's,
It's contractual stuff.
yeah, the stuff that you don't have control over. So, I mean, I don't see much for increases at all. Except for putting back the
Yeah, I
police officer back in.
tried to leave everything alone best,
Yep.
because everything's been working pretty good. So I tried to leave it alone. I mean,
We're putting that officer back
Yep.
in instead of taking it out. Is the only real change to the budget. Other than the contractual,
other than the
contractual
reserve
pay.
rate, the part-time rate.
Right,
and
yep.
The contractual raise.
Anybody got any questions? Go ahead.
Sorry, I got,
Go ahead, Bill.
since this is the first, employee benefits, thing, I'm a little unclear on how the retirement program works for the town. This is through the state
Yes,
and the main
State PERS, yeah.
yes, same,
and that's instead of social security.
correct.
And how does it relate cost wise to social security?
So for,
Social security, we'd be paying 7.5.
correct, and here, and now this isn't for the whole town, this is for the 3C special main, it's 12.8.
Yeah,
Correct. So, and that's, I will tell you, that is one of those things that's going to be a retention discussion.
right.
Because in many towns, the trend used to be you either had pension or, social security, but you didn't have pension and social security. A lot of towns now have funded social security and the pension,
They can do that.
and you can do that.
Huh.
So it's complicated. Towns around us do have that extra. Now, the younger generation than me looks at that and thinks of that as something that's coming out of their paycheck sometimes, and that they're fearful of what the future holds for that. Another potential way to retain people is to have some type of a match, like a 401k in the private sector. We could do like a match for employees up to a certain amount at like a Main Start program. That would offer them another vehicle to save. And that would probably cost even less than Social Security. And then that's an investment, and it's a managed portfolio versus the Social Security system.
But as a town, for our full-time employees, we have to provide either social security or the main
Yes.
PERS.
Yes,
So the 401k would be.
that would be,
an
that could
additional-
be in addition
if
to.
that was-
But again, that's, like I said, a lot of towns are going to Social Security and a pension, or a pension, and then on top of that, another retirement fund vehicle. Main Start is one of them. They're called PEG, a 457,
57.
or there's another one that's available. But, so that's another option too, but we only do right now, main PERS.
For any employees or
Well,
just for the police and,
well, we do main PERS 3C. That's a special plan that's specifically for police, EMS, and firefighters. But there's criteria they have to meet to receive that benefit. For the rest of us, for the rest of the employees,
It's the regular plan.
it's the regular plan.
which is a lower rate.
Yeah,
yes,
it
it's a lower
doesn't
rate.
pay, Pays 50% of your average three highest annual salaries, whereas the special plan.
Pays
like
2/3,
Orders
3/4.
of your three highest annual salaries with 25 years of service and no
No
Age.
age.
normal retirement age. The regular plan has a normal retirement age that's actually changed. When I was hired, it was 60. Then a few years later, they upped it to 65. And you also had to work 25 years. Then you would qualify for the 50%.
Great, thank you.
Is anybody else getting no questions? Somebody like to make a motion on do we want to do this or wait?
That's up to you guys. Do you guys
I
want to
mean.
vote on these as
I
you
mean,
go,
I
or
think we-
hold?
I think we.
Did somebody like to make a
Want
motion?
to get
Can I
updated
just say,
figures?
in your book,
Well, we have our updated figures. Nothing's changed except for the new
Oh, okay.
police officer, putting back in the eight man.
Right.
That's the only thing that's changed.
in your book, in this piece right here, there's a piece of paper that has a list. I meant to tell you this last time. That has the page number of rates assignments that are in the new book. And what the department name is and where we are right now for initial budget. And you can use this if you wanted to, as we indicate this. It's in there.
So
If you
select
don't
board,
have it, I can give it.
So that's 340.
What's that?
This is good.
You like
So that's gonna be changed to,
Peg, what would that new number be with the inclusion of the additional, well, of retaining our force?
$1,334,567.
Thank you.
500 and which?
67.
5, 6, 7. How often does that happen?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It must be karma. John. Blodgett has
Go
his
ahead,
hand
John. Sorry.
I make a motion for the select board to approve $1,334,567 for the police department.
Wait,
Police
here a
services.
second. But here a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? To nothing. Up to the budget committee.
Okay, we have a figure of 1,340,000.
No.
No,
No, 1,334,334.
330, excuse me. I'm off to a good start here, right?
5, 6, 7.
3, 3, 4, 5.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Let's try that again. $1,334,567 for police services.
So moved.
Second.
More discussion? All those in favor?
Wait,
Aye.
Brendan had his hand up.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Takes what Alex a
5, 6.
little bit
7.
time to count.
Look at that.
I think, Jan, you're gonna need a taller arm. We're gonna have to give you a special card. You might have to stand up.
You are good.
I just want to say thank you. This retention, knowing we have some people that support us, helps with retention as well. So I just want to thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Let's see. Yep, 300. Just looking to see what page it's on.
If you turn your pages to page 13. For E EMS.
Unlucky 13.
Chief
You
Booker,
wanna take 5 minutes?
it's up to you. Does guys want to take a break for 5 minutes before we dive into the next one?
I second.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break then.
Okay.
You don't.
All right,
Okay.
you're
Okay.
good.
All right, well, moving on to EMS. We got Chief Booker here in front of us to crucify, so we'll see what we can do.
There.
So, mine's gonna sound kind of a lot like John, at least right off the bat. The biggest increases that we're looking at this year is, in payroll. Sort of across the board, again, like previously mentioned, just attempting to stay competitive with those around us. We've discussed and agreed upon, at least in our initial conversation, the $2 an hour, across the board increase for our, EMS staff. So in my world, it's a little different than John's. I have people that work per diem and part-time, but I also have a complement of full-time staff as well. So essentially what that does is it just gives us, again, $2 an hour across the board. In doing so, we had to get a little creative in where we move stuff. So if you look at the, part-time
See that
employees,
$95,000 decrease. Okay.
yeah. So it's like a $65,000.
$65,000.
In the part-time employee section, so, which, again, it's increased elsewhere, but it kind of works its way out. So you'll see like a $53,000, 661 increase in overtime. And, that's large, but we are using some overtime. And this is sort of just preparing to continue to provide the service that we've provided, cover the calls we're covering, but also allows us to give our full-time employees an 8-hour a week overtime sort of differential. We call it the shift differential, but it's covered, it's 8 hours overtime per week. So, and again, in discussing retention tools, that remains a big retention tool for the EMS department.
They're working those hours. We're not giving.
Correct, they are working.
They're working
Yeah,
those
they're
hours.
working. My full-time employees work 2 24-hour shifts per week. And so, again, the retention piece is multifaceted in that they have more time off, right? They work 24-hour shift, they have a few days off, they come back for another one, a few days, so on and so forth. And then it also offers an 8 hours overtime, so 16 hours overtime per 2-week pay period. So really a good retention tool. It's fairly famous in the fire EMS world, around us. So it kind of keeps us, scheduling wise in the game with keeping our employees. So that's where I've now covered all those sort of increases in once, but again, because we're leaning towards hiring more full-time staff, we have a decrease in the part-time employee world as well. So we kind of make up for it elsewhere.
Now I see, what did I just? We budgeted 138,000 last year.
Yep.
And they're at 93.
Yeah.
So you're looking at still close to 45,000. Do you think you're gonna go another 45,000 in overtime between now and then?
Between now and the fiscal year.
Now and the end of June?
Probably not. It'll be close. Yeah, it'll be close. I mean, as we get into the early parts of the summer,
Spring.
people take off, we cover, and we have a dedicated group that seems to step up really well and cover those people, but it does come at a cost. It does come at the overtime cost and allows us to give people the time off that they need and those types of things. So I suspect, going through the last several payrolls, it'll be close. I don't know the exact number of pay periods we have left in the year, but I can do the math on it, but it'll be close.
It'll be close.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
he'll be under.
Yeah, it'll be under a little bit, I think. That's always the plan, but yeah, but I think next year, as we at least begin to plan for it, I think that number was really kind of carefully calculated between Dewey and I, and we think it's safe, and gives us some honest room to sort of provide the coverage that we've been providing with an increased call volume.
Just so you know, when we go over these numbers and I actually sit down and go through what we've already paid, and then I look at the hour requirement from last year and I model it into, so that's how like I said, we
it's
do our
different,
numbers
yeah.
differently.
Yeah.
And yet we're always within like 5,000 of each other, but he should be good till the end, and that $53,000 increase should be accurate.
And apt, and just a side note, and because we have the ability in this department, being not so huge that we don't talk to each other. My office door is always open and, you know, there. If we were to lose somebody full-time, that's 40 hours a week we have to cover.
Yeah.
Regardless.
To eat that up quick.
Exactly. So suddenly we may, you know, if someone moves on, we may be dipping into that because we just need to cover it. So,
No, I'm just curious how.
no, absolutely. No, it's a big number. When I first saw it, I was like, ooh. But I think, you know, unfortunately, to speak to our earlier conversation, there's just an increased demand and the staffing that we have now allows us to cover that and not burn people out, which I think plays a huge role in reduction. So,
Now your overtime, right now you have about 40,000 left.
yeah,
That, so that just between the book printing and now.
Right.
And, I think we have a few payrolls left, so it is gonna.
gonna be close, you know.
Gonna be close.
Again, I typically, when I look at the overtime on my payroll summary, when I'm submitting payroll, I always kind of cringe a little bit. But I think it's become a serious part of our operation and allows us to continue to provide service, which then generates revenue. So I think we, you know, this is allowing us to continue to run our operation more full staff than it ever has been.
And we try very hard, you know, within that regular employee, part-time employee and overtime. You know, if Derek comes to me and says, I've got the opportunity to get a full-time medic. You know, we look at this, you know, this isn't a stagnant document. Throughout the year, we pull this out 3, 4, 5, 6 times. You know, Derek has an idea and he comes in and, you know, we are constantly looking at this, making sure we're where we need to
You
be.
know, it's no secret, that we're leaning towards more full-time staff. You know, when I took over as chief, that was a discussion we had early on. You know, I just think it's the way of the world. However, on the record, our per diem and part-time staff are second to none. And they really are dedicated and they like to work, like to be here in this community, and I could go on and on about them. I won't, but the point is, it's hard, you know. I find myself wanting to come in here and say, hey, I want to hire 6 more full-time people. Right, and then, you know, eliminate the per diem part-time staff, but I'll tell you right now, this group is dedicated and I don't want to lose them. So you know, that's why we discuss these different sections of the budget that allow us to keep covered. So I understand that overtime number looks big, but I think it's reasonable, and I think it allows us to keep doing what we're doing. And the truth is, in the EMS world, the ability to put a truck on the road is the only way to generate revenue to offset those costs. So, you know, if I had to shut down the transfer world because we're short-staffed, that's revenue out the door. You know, it's lost revenue. So, you know, if the overtime budget is up, it's honest, it's a transparent number and allows us to do what we do. So,
John?
Just to clarify. That's your overall expense and you do get a revenue. of $1,269,395.
that is our anticipated revenue.
That's your anticipated revenue.
Yep.
So that's the difference of 577.
Yeah, so. Yeah, that's our anticipated, and we typically come pretty close to those numbers.
I know we're jumping ahead to revenue, but.
We're jumping ahead.
Huh?
Okay, you're jumping ahead. That's all
Because
right.
this is one of those departments that we get some revenue from to help cover our costs. In my eyes,
And.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely, absolutely.
my 4 eyes or whatever.
Val?
Speaking of the revenue, in an ideal world, how would you envision being able to maximize your revenue? What would you need in the department to increase the revenue?
So
Probably people, they pay all their bills.
we're doing it. Honestly, Val, we're doing it right now. We're covering calls, we're taking transfers, we are using collections. And so, and we're increasing our, we just did an increase. We
Right.
did it earlier this year because we
Medicare.
want to be ready for this discussion. So, for this, how we bill for service, we increase those incrementally, you know, in accordance with Medicare law and that sort of thing. But so to be honest with you, straight face, we're doing it. The avenues in which we generate revenue, you know, billing for mutual aid services now, which was something we do, so,
Yeah.
I had this discussion with the select board on more than one occasion, but basically, if we provide a mutual aid service to a town, we're sending them a bill directly, and we're sending the patient a bill for the services that we provide, so the avenues to increase revenue are tackled, and they're exhausted. We're doing everything that we can to increase revenue. The staffing that we have now, quite frankly, is perfect. I have 4 people on duty 24 hours a day. And that allows us to take those trips and oftentimes, like we talked about with the select board, I'm at home and I'll come in and cover a third call with the driver, those types of things. So I wouldn't even ask for more staffing for our operation, because I think that would be costly. I would say that, the staff that we have now allows us to cover more calls and generate more revenue. So we're doing it.
So the emergency calls are kind of a given, but transfers are. Are there more transfers out there that you could do?
We're doing every one that we can. Let's be,
Right, with the staffing, but I guess what I'm getting at is if you had more capabilities, could you take more transfers
So we
and
have-
then make more money off that, or
we
is
have
that?
explored putting on more staff during certain times of the day, but the demand for transfers really kind of comes and goes.
Yeah.
It's busier certain times of the year, depending on a lot of factors, bed availability of the state, if, somebody may need a bed somewhere else for higher level of care, but they can't get there because there's no bed available, right? So we could go a whole week and do 1 or 2 transfers, or we could do 6 on a Friday.
Yeah.
So it's hard to answer your question, there probably is a time when I can put a 3rd truck on, just assigned to do transfers, and we've done that before in the past, but we certainly found that the demand didn't meet the justification
Okay.
of staffing that 3rd ambulance.
Yes, that's exactly what I was.
So I think to answer your question, officially, I don't think so. I think that we tried it, it hasn't worked, and I think it's a plus.
I think that's key right there is
Yeah.
you tried something, did work, so there's no sense in going back, and that's.
Yeah.
And if all of a sudden we're doing a ton of transfers or finding that we're turning a lot of them down because we don't have the staffing, it's always, it's a fluid thing. We could have that discussion again, so.
John?
Yeah, if I may, I'm just gonna come at the revenue question from a different angle. Maybe I'm looking at 2023, and there was about a $250,000 differential between expenses and revenue.
Yep.
And then I'm looking at what we're projecting, and it's $500,000 and change. Can you speak to? Is there a trend here? Is there something that we?
I think the trend is things are just getting more expensive and reimbursement hasn't changed in the EMS billing world. As far as what we're seeing in return from, one-call billing, transfer billing, that sort of thing. We are going through a process right now with the federal government, Medicare reporting. And our hope is, once that's done, that improves Medicare reimbursement. But ultimately, I think the cost of things just continue to rise, payroll costs continue to rise, but medical reimbursement, EMS reimbursement for billing hasn't caught up.
Do you have any idea what percentage is Medicare reimbursement of this? I mean, it's.
I'd have to pull it up
Yeah,
somewhere if
it's-
I could.
I know that's a tough one.
So, and it varies because if somebody has a supplemental, Medicare has rates that they bill at percentage wise, but it doesn't mean that they're paying them. If that makes any sense. If somebody
No,
has,
totally. The
So-
insurance
it's a crazy
is-
work. Yeah,
is
exactly.
insane.
So that's it's a great question because we've had that conversation with the select board before. Hey, how much are we getting reimbursed? And
Because this, what we have here is a trend that's
Oh,
not going in the right
absolutely.
direction.
I agree. And I think like I told Val, I think the only real answer is to explore those avenues for more call volume that allow us to generate more billing, which hopefully in turn helps offset that cost. But again, and like we spoke of earlier, the mutual aid billing piece of it, is another way that we try to make up for that deficit, you know,
Which I think the town's.
But
get a
there's-
Piece of that too, correct?
That's the old make it up on volume thing. If your expenses are going up, but the amount you're getting paid for that call isn't changing, that call is costing you money.
I agree. I agree with you, and I think that's a hot button topic in the EMS world, and I think that's why they're looking at improving those things. But again, you know, we only have so much control on what these insurance companies on Medicare will reimburse us, so.
Bill?
Yeah, chief, what's the amount that, excuse me, that say at the end of the year, you just write off, you know, they don't pay the bill, you send them to collections, I mean, what do you know, how much do you just
We
say?
had that conversation about a month ago.
Yeah.
Right, and I think we were, because of the, to answer your question, Bill, I have to pull it up,
So
the exact number, but we allow for that in the revenue.
we allow for that in the revenue calculation, but we're running at about 242,000. And that's outstanding. But bear in mind, guys, before everybody gets too excited about $242,000 in outstanding, it can take months and months and months. So like I could pull a report today and it says 242, but that includes what's been billed from a month ago, and we get an aging report.
Yep.
If you'll recall, the aging report, when we wrote off the big write-off a couple years ago, was excessive,
Yeah, huge,
excessive.
yes.
But our true, what I would say, tried and true, what you're gonna write off is probably around $92,000.
May I ask a question?
Go
So
ahead.
every business has, bad debt. Do you have a percentage? Do you know over a course of time what that percentage of,
So I could have told you that percentage with reasonable certainty, about 22% probably prior to COVID. After that, it's kind of a guess. Because we took such a dip in COVID and now we're back up, but now the economy's taking a dip. It's taking people longer to pay. So what we're seeing is before they pay in a shorter, the people who owed us paid in a shorter amount of time. Now people who owe us are taking a longer amount of time. So every month I get a read on what's 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and what's 120 out. But when you really get down to the level of detail in those 120 days, what you're seeing is people may have been billed in 2022, in 2024, they're still paying some amount on that bill that is in collections.
so this is personal people paying, but that's not insurance paying.
So it's the difference, most likely, it's the difference between what
the
insurance
copay.
paid and what the person had to pay.
And a lot of those are co-pays, yeah.
And a lot of that becomes too, is the Medicare care component, which isn't just a Waldeboro problem. So, we go to these meetings at Maine Health and they give a community update. That's one of the things that even hospitals are struggling with is the Medicare, Medicaid reimbursement. Just doesn't cover what the service is. So we do adjust for those every year. Like Derek said, we went up recently based on the new Medicare numbers, we went up.
We went up at least their allowable,
Right.
which was like 4.3%, and then more. We went up, $110 or something like that, something that sort of said, look, we're gonna do more, because we're allowed to bill, frankly, whatever we want to bill. But it doesn't mean we're gonna get that in return.
Right.
And Medicare is gonna stop us at a certain point. So if it's a Medicare specific, we could send a $2,000 bill, and Medicare is gonna say, depending on the level of service we provide, we're gonna pay you $600. And so that's such a hard thing to predict, and then decide what the percentage of that is every month, the report that I like, that makes me feel it's kind of tangible. I got a report from Comstar. They deposit weekly, and then they'll send us a report at the end of the month. So like for February's, it was $103,000 you know.
In
so-
from collections?
No, no. that-
Comstar is our
that's-
billing.
That's
Oh.
from Comstar, that's revenue, that's
Okay,
like.
okay.
That's cut and dry, this was our money, you know, and so. So those are the real tangible reports that we get, it varies, that's a big one, you know.
And then we have a second part of that report that shows the collections, which is the older stuff. And that's a pretty stable number, which indicates, and if you delve down into that, those are the ones that have started paying, you know, like it used to be, they would pay that number back in a shorter period of time, but it's just taking longer for people to pay.
I think the ugly truth of it is that there's, and you know it, like you said, any business is gonna be at some uncollectible amount, but it's dramatic in EMS, and the only answer is to kind of bill more, but then creating this strain on the taxpayer that uses our services because the bill is so much more, as their insurance only pays so much, and Medicare only pays so much, and they're getting a bill for the remainder, so.
Well,
Yeah, that's always been my concern with billing for ambulance service ever since we started. Is that usually it's the people that can afford it least that end up getting billed directly. And what I'm hearing is those bills are getting bigger and bigger every year. And we're trying to balance the budget or support the budget.
So I think,
It's revenue, but it's really hammering some people.
I think the piece of that that came up in a select board meeting when we increased those prices was that the town of Waldeboro, we take care of our people, we try to, right? There's avenues that we explored, you know, well beyond what a lot of towns do or don't, to make sure that we're helping them offset that bill. Philbrook Fund's a big one, right? You know, Karen Ann can offer some services in those regards as well. So, you know, and then when we send a bill to our interlocal agreement towns, Friendship and Jefferson, there's a piece of that uncollected in that bill.
That Philbrook fund covers only Waldeboro residents though.
Hmm.
So if somebody comes and says, you know, I'm having trouble paying this bill, we can utilize Philbrook funds to pay that bill.
They have to come and ask for help with it.
Or a representative of them, right? So
Right.
their
Correct.
family, and they just come fill an application out and
And Derek is very aware of, he looks at these, he knows who's who. And he does a good job of making sure that if that resource is needed, it's met.
Yeah, I understand that the service can't bill some people and not others.
exactly,
That's a
Yeah.
non-starter. That,
yes.
so I hope we can deal with that somehow.
Bob? Talking about delinquencies again, you mentioned our partner towns. What percentage of the delinquencies we have? I'll say it's delinquent, if it's over 120 days, and I'm being generous. People should be paying that bill within 60 days.
If they
And
can,
and they're-
but honestly,
The question is an overwhelming percentage of the delinquencies in Waldeboro or in our partner towns, or is it from outside the area?
So we get asked that question a lot, and it's, we have to pull up a deep in the belly of the beast report from Comstar to know exactly what's what and where. I will tell you, just something tangible. The majority of our call volume in the 911 world is in this town. There's like 900 911 calls in this town. So speaking in terms of how much we bill in this town, I suspect highly that a majority of that uncollectible is from this town, just because the amount of service that we provide in this town generates the most bills. So I could dive into that. I could find a percentage by town. We've done it before.
we did it during the
but-
billing and I believe that the spread was 70-30, 70-20-10 about.
So is there a perception that among, say, Waldeboro residents, that the ambulance service is for free and they shouldn't be paying for it?
Not that I've heard.
No.
Okay.
Not that I think, as a matter of fact, our crews, and I can speak to this because I join them on their calls. There's folks that are concerned about getting a bill and sometimes will tend to attempt to refuse our service, and they're allowed to do that, right? But, you know, a lot of our crews spend a lot of time trying to convince someone to go to a hospital that needs to go. And I'll typically tell them as a chief, we'll figure something out. You know, not that I'm making promises or empty promises, but the priority is their care. But a lot of times our crews are spending time and they're concerned. I don't think there's a perception that they think it's free. So.
No, but I think the perception is that we have residents who utilize the services that are hurting. And it's coming down to, how do I make my monthly income cover all of these bills? And we've been good about, with the collections, is, you know, don't set yourself up for failure. And, you know, we've had this conversation with the collection agency. You know, don't set people up for failure. Don't tell us you can pay $100 a month if only you can pay 25. I'd rather have 25 over a longer period of time, because they're trying, and you don't want to hurt. You know, we try to mitigate hurting our residents, you know, because it is hard right now.
At the risk of sounding kind of feel good. I've had conversations with people, much to Julie's point, that have had their bills out in front of them and said, how am I gonna pay for this ambulance bill? They wanna pay for the ambulance bill, but they're trying to figure out how to pay for their groceries,
Right.
their medications. And so I have found myself more than once saying, give us what you can give us. We have had abated pieces of bills for residents that live in Waldeboro, and we've said, look, your insurance paid this much, pay a third of what's left. You know, we've made those types of things just to say, hey, we want to take care of you. We understand that, you know, those that use the ambulance service are oftentimes, you know, less than fortunate, and we do those things that they may bend some of the rules a little bit, but they pass as rate base test for our citizens in Waldeboro. So, and we try to explore the avenue of, you know, where can we reach out, you know, like in Warren, for example, mutual aid town. If we bill a patient that's on Medicare for the services that we render, and we get paid something back, we still send Warren a bill for $700, and that's just Warren. So we're making up for some of that, you know. So if I tell a Waldeboro resident, hey, you only have to pay a third of the remainder of your bill that Medicare left hanging for you, I'm making up for it when I cross the line in Warren, because I'm charging them $700. So we're trying to do what's best for everybody, especially our town, you know, here in Waldeboro. So, but no, to answer your question, I don't think there's a perception that it's free. But I do think that they understand that we're here to work with them and take care of them first, and we'll figure the bill out later. So.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, just of that bad, I call it bad debt business that I was in.
I think that's the
Uh,
term we use.
for the, partnering towns.
Yeah.
Jefferson and Friendship. Is it something in the contract, we will take care of our own, or they have to
No.
make up for it?
So in the contract, if you'll recall, during this whole negotiation with our neighboring communities that we serve under a mutual, under an interlocal agreement, which is different than our mutual aid
Yeah,
towns.
we also tried to not call it a contract.
If you'll recall, they all wanted the revenue. And I
Right.
kept saying, well, that's great, y'all want the revenue, but you gotta take the bad debt with it.
I remember a conversation in Jefferson that Bob and Jan and I had that was very much, you know, we'll give you the good, but we're gonna take the bad with it.
I can now pass through Jefferson without arrows. But that's all taken care of now in the percentages. So it's the percentages, and it's part of our formula that we carry. And our debt, our bad debt from the first year, you know, it's gone down a little bit, but it's pretty even. And I just think, again, I think that's a product of COVID, and I think it's a product of the economy lately. And hopefully if and when the economy improves, I think that debt will go down a little bit more and probably level out. We're always going to carry some type of bad debt. But again, with the collection part of it, the collection piece of it, it's much more manageable. And when we get to the point where we're going to come to you and say, hey, we need to write off this whatever I'm just gonna say $100,000, and I'm just making that number up. I'm pulling that out of the air because it's late and I can do math better with nice numbers like that. We're gonna then break that debt down in that formula for the percentages for each town, and not their debt, but everybody's debt.
Everybody.
So it would be broken down by how much we're responsible in that formula, how much they're responsible.
So it's that formula, the formula is based on call volume and population.
Right.
So, you know, it ends up working itself out to be 68% Waldeboro, 13% Friendship, and 30 some odd percent, or 18.6% Jefferson.
We used to remember all that off the top of our
Yeah, I
heads.
nailed it. So that's taken our operations, our revenue, our uncollectible, and it goes into a formula, and we do the math out and we send them a bill. So Jefferson, I think, is looking at like 165 this year, Friendship's 115, somewhere up there, and they're doing, you know, that's 210 calls between the two of them.
And it's important to point out that this arrangement is heads and shoulders above what we used to be doing,
Absolutely.
where we weren't really recovering much. of
No.
anything.
No,
So that whole thing has changed around.
absolutely.
and to speak to the operations level, which this is a numbers game here, but you know, the relationship between us and Jefferson on the side of the road at 2 o'clock in the morning is, you can't beat it, you know, and so that's means a lot to myself and the crews that work for me. So we like being Jefferson, we like their call volume, we like their crew, and we want to continue to have this work relationship, and also same for Friendship, same thing, you know, Chief Benner down in Friendship, they're a great group to work with, so. So we really want to keep these things up, and if it involves having numbers meetings, we'll have them, you know, but like Bob said, this is heads and tails.
They are well informed.
And well taken care of.
Yes.
You know, our response time is quick. We're there. We have paramedics. Sometimes they get 2 of us. Go ahead, Val.
Just on the aged revenue on page 53, the revenue for EMS. Year to date is only $2,700. Is that the scale of what we're talking about here, or no?
No, that,
Collection.
that's some of the
collection
collections.
agency. That's,
Outside collection.
and that's what we received from them.
Okay,
Right.
so is there the aged revenue that's coming in previously, is that in just revenue, the revenue? line?
Some of it is, it depends how old it is when it's considered aged. In this line item.
I will tell you, that number speaks to Julie's point. Takes a long time to recoup things. Sometimes it's $25 checks here and then $25 checks there, and
Sure, yeah.
so that's.
Sometimes the billing isn't done until 30 days after something happens. So we still have a month out from the instant. Billing, the billing.
And, right,
I get a lot of calls about billing stuff where someone's like, I just got this bill and you guys took care of me 100 days ago. And it's like,
well, it's not, it's the insurance company billing problem.
Right.
So
First.
they go through the insurance company first and then they're billed through us. So that's part of the it's not our billing company that's slow, it's the insurance billing.
What's the reimbursement on the insurance side?
Right.
Yeah. And Comstar does a fantastic job.
Yep.
They really do. They're a phone call away. I was on the phone with them today, on a billing thing, and you push one number and you get a voice and you can ask a question and they pull up the call right in front of them and the bill and what's been paid and what hasn't been paid, and they're just great to work with. It's a no-brainer to keep working with them and paying them the 4% that we did, because they're great, so. Just speaking in your world, the fiscal year world, we're up 132 calls. Year to date, so from fiscal year 23 to 24. And, you know, that's just speaks to the truth that we're just getting busier, you know. Anybody have any question on that piece of it before we move on to? Oh, in payroll, there's a small increase for our medical director stipend. Dr. Lee. He continues to serve as a medical director, again, a great investment. We have to have it by an ADMS rule. And again, he's one that's phone call away, comes and does trainings, really helps us out. And our neighboring agency is paying him a lot more money than we're paying him. And so we're just trying to sort of even the playing field. And this number still doesn't come close to what the neighboring agency is paying him. So he's kind of doing it for cheap for us. So we're trying to take care of him and retain him in his services. So that's a payroll thing. Other than that, we spoke a little bit about revenue. Anticipated looking at $102,000 increase in revenue from the previous fiscal year. Anticipated. We come pretty close to those. I think in 23, we were like $1,043,000,043 in revenue.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Very close.
So look at that. So yeah, so we typically come pretty close to those numbers. And there's no reason to think that we won't continue to do that. So transfers are up. Our ability to cover transfers, more importantly, is up because we have the staffing. So. And then the other stuff, honestly, folks, is just nature of the beast stuff like supplies. Talking to our vendors for consumable materials. They're up 10, 12, 15%. Fuel surcharges are crazy for deliveries. So we're just putting a little more buffer in that world to allow us to keep putting supplies on our trucks. So. And I think something that's discussed in terms of budget is I have a truck in our fleet that's getting very old. It's got 225,000 miles on it. Its replacement is on order. And that sounds like old hat because it's been on order since 2022. So just like we said it was going to happen, we've been significantly delayed in getting a delivery of our ambulance. We're due for one this year. And to be honest with you, I'm just hoping it shows up. In the meantime, there's going to be some maintenance costs. Thankfully, we have town mechanics now. Julie can give me the numbers on how much that saved us. John and you and I just talked about that a couple of days ago, but we gotta have a buffer in the budget to anticipate increased maintenance costs of this aging fleet. And that's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately.
What make is that vehicle? What makes
It's a
it?
Chevy.
Oh, that's why.
You're killing us.
Its replacement is a Ford. So
You would have said that no matter what.
No, I would have said if it's a Ford, it's just getting broke in.
So that's just in all seriousness, something to keep in your mind when we talk about budget is the increase we put in there is just to hopefully cover the increased cost of maintenance. And in the meantime, we're hoping to get a new truck and.
Have you heard anything about the delivery?
I am hearing that the supply chain in the ambulance world is improving. So, and they haven't told me that it's not on track, but I have told Julie that, it may come to a point where if they suddenly say, hey, you're gonna be another year, we'll have to be back in this room figuring something out because that truck is just gonna cost us money.
So we have 2 on order
We
right
have
now.
2 trucks on order. One's a 2014. That's the one that's going away first, and then the second replacement, also a Ford, is right behind it the following year. And then to that point, Julie and I discussed not keeping them as long moving forward, just because the call volume continues to increase, their mileage continues to increase, and their life cycle just needs to be shorter so that we're not spending, thousands of dollars on the backside of their life cycle to replace them
And I adjusted that
in the capital.
in the capital because we used to say they would last 10 years and I think we took them down to 7.
I think 8. we
8,
talked about,
sorry.
yeah. So that gives us some room to, right now, if I turn around and wanted to sell that truck, we probably could get something for it, but
But pay somebody to take it.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
So.
that's
so-
another Chevy dope to serve.
I knew that was a
So
Chevy
when-
Jeff. I
so when
think
we come
everybody.
to so as we replace the new ones and we keep them for 8 years instead of 10, you know, maybe we'll have a little resale value on the backside as well, so.
Does anybody else get any more questions for Derek? Go ahead.
I have one more, and I'm sorry, I'm new, so sorry, I apologize. Equipment R and M.
Yep.
So I see that you, that jumped in the 2024 budget. It looks like you're probably gonna end up underneath that. And then you've got an increase for 2025. I'm not sure. Can you speak to that?
So tucked in there in that line is our lease for some equipment that we lease. And so I think the increase we put in that for this coming budget was to have a little buffer in the event that that goes up. We're gonna be under it, but we haven't got a bill from Stryker yet. So that's a holdup for this budget. As a matter of fact, and some of this, the things to do this coming week is call them and ask where our bill is, because we put that $48,000 in operating, because we're leasing that equipment. So we're leasing 3 cardiac monitors and 2 CPR machines. And so that line right now looks plentiful, but in theory, by July 1, we will have spent $48,000 of it to pay that bill.
So this is equipment that's been put in service after it, new to the 2024 budget.
Correct.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
They just haven't built
They
it.
haven't built.
We're hoping they forgot,
Well,
but I don't think they
They
did.
don't know.
I'll speak to that a little further. They went through a big computer change. Our Stryker guy is really good. He's a phone call away as well, and he's like, look, I know you want your bill because you budgeted for it, but something's up with the computers. It's lost, and so I keep on them. And so yeah, that stuff's in place in service. Our crews are using it. It's been great to have it. We needed it, but that should be spent
Yeah.
by.
Dang, it's not a typo.
It's not a typo. And I will tell you, that used to be in the capital line item.
Yeah,
Prior to that, that's why you don't see that big of a thing, but we were at that time budgeting about 12 grand every year for heart monitors. And then these amazing CPR machines came along that do perform CPR so that the medics and the EMTs don't get fatigued.
So we will catch up with this, and by that I mean, we've talked about the value of an ambulance, including new monitor, and new stretcher when it gets here. So that, because we were way overdue for replacing those monitors. I mean, they were,
12 years
I
old.
got a phone call from, well, actually, the gentleman was here servicing them, and he said, I can't do this next year. And so I was like, hey, we need more than one, we need 3. So that was sort of an urgent thing, and thankfully, through Stryker, we were able to work out a lease.
And
plan.
came back to the budget committee mid-year and they approved it and it's worked great.
So, but in theory, you know, as we move forward, the life cycle of an ambulance will include the life cycle of its cardiac monitor and its stretcher. And so we just start brand new every 8 years with a truck. That way we're not overusing stuff, we're not underusing stuff, and it's being replaced at a good interval, because you end up not being able to service or replace parts for something if it's, 12 years old, so
And the lease is much better because if it upgrades, we get the upgraded model.
automatically.
Yeah.
But again, so fiscal year 25, that couple grand increases, just in case they throw us a bill with some, with some twang to it, because we, everything's going up. So I just figured we ought to put a couple $1,000s in there. But yeah, so ultimately, it's my goal that we pay that bill before July 1, because the stuff's in service, we haven't paid a dime for it yet, so.
thank you.
Anybody else got any questions? Would somebody like to make a motion? Select board?
Make a motion, we approve $1,846,344 to Mercy Medical Services.
Second.
Is there any more discussion on it? Seeing none, all those in favor? Budget committee.
Okay, we have a number 1,846,344. Did I get it right?
You got that right.
Okay, I can read that one. We have a motion. Thank you. Any second? Okay. Discussion. All those in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Opposed?
No.
I was
Oh, you
for
are.
it. I was for it. I was
Oh,
still on the
okay.
draw.
All right, so 9-0 on EMS.
I'll echo John's words and thank you guys for everything.
Yeah.
Like John said, we really appreciate the support of the town and helps us do what we do and I think it keeps our crews happy. So
It helps that
Thank
you
you.
guys explain everything that's going on too.
we try.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, it does. It makes a huge difference and we understand it.
I just want to say something because they're both in the room and I mean this sincerely. I have the privilege of working with both the police department and EMS every day. I don't think there's a day goes by. It's very rare that the three of us don't talk to each other. It has been an absolute pleasure to work with both these young men. And I have to tell you, I think yesterday there was a call in town that exemplified how well these two organizations and these two departments work together on a very serious call. And it entailed one of our part-time police officers jumping in who was on duty for the police department, who was also a medic. Chief Lash let him go because we had 2 or 3 calls at the same
Yeah, I
time.
had to go to Warren.
Had to go to another call. So it just exemplifies days like that when they're happy things, like we're doing the right thing. It's awesome. And I mean, I'm privileged to see it every day. And I really appreciate everything that you and your crews do because they're fabulous. And we really do have a top-notch group of police officers and EMTs, medics. And it's a privilege.
Couldn't do what else you guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We've had enough for one night.
Well, Peg has some goodies for you.
Okay.
Well, we already sweetened you up. But you asked about potentially putting line item, some more wording on the warrant. So we came up with some samples for you.
Have the sample warrant with the writing underneath, and then you guys have been getting a bunch of emails from me, I hope. So I have printed everything I've emailed.
Oh,
If
good.
anybody needs a copy, but I don't have copies for everybody. But if you need it, I will make it then, just let me know. So you guys remember this, the warrant, the annual town warrant. And so you'll see on the side, I'll pull that apart. There's you have to.
An example of this is what we just went through with the police department. I talked about the other night.
Oh, you got it.
Thank you very much.
Increase on it.
Friendship.
It's gonna happen.
So Tom.
So it's the wording I want you to look at underneath the question when you get it. And some of them we left alone.
There's an extra one.
Take a look and see.
Another one down.
Yeah, they keep getting stuck. Yeah, I thought you had them extra.
This is awesome, actually. This is awesome.
So there's
Yeah.
sample 1, 2, 3, and 4.
I was apprehensive because I don't want people to get more confused when they vote. But the wording is a little bit different. You can see the bold in each bottom of the box,
I don't see anything wrong with that.
but they're all a little bit different. And then some are normal or.
I don't see much difference.
Well,
The bold print is great.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%.
So the first two, like if you read it out loud, initial request 30,000, the select board budget committee and department head reduced this request.
I kind of like that one.
And then the second one, you read it out loud, initial request was reduced by 25,000 from 171,456 during budget process. For the third, there was no reduction made to the budget request by select board budget committee and department heads.
I think you might have to combine 1 and 3.
I
And
think
add
the
that
more
language.
simple, the better.
I think you should combine 1 and 3. If there's no change, then I would put that. And then if there is a reduction or an increase.
Yeah, I wouldn't even put in, for example, under sample number 4, you indicate what the original request is. I wouldn't put what the original request is. I would just say that it was increased by $15,000. And they can do the math, because
Yeah.
you've got the main number right there on the first line of the article.
That won't confuse.
And it's less confusing. They know they're voting for 217. They won't think they're voting for
Good point.
So,
222.
so give me the sentence. What do you think it would?
I would say increase $15,000 over original request by select board, budget committee and department heads.
And you have your original you have your number up top.
Well, if you take that out, then it reads like the original request
With 170.
was by the budget, the select board, budget committee and department head. So who increased it?
Well, good point. So it would be increased by select board, budget committee and department heads.
Over the original request?
Original, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see why that wouldn't be good wording. I like 1 and 3. I think they're all good.
I like 1 and 2. Those are both rejections.
Yeah.
Some better. Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, let's just say that on each one.
You said you like the bold, Pam? said
Yes.
She's not sure that that's even an option, because we did. Yeah, because it's real.
You can make that happen, right, Pam?
It's so specific. Like even the font, it doesn't.
Right,
It
this
doesn't-
is,
It bothers me that it's different size fonts, and she's like, there's nothing I can do.
It doesn't
about
give me
it.
the option of bolding anything. I mean, I can make a phone call, not sure. Well,
I think it was bold for this to point it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
we can,
I wished it would look like this. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we
Yep.
can try, but it's more about, it's more about the wording at this point.
Even the underline.
I don't think I can do that.
Square parentheses.
Don't focus on the option.
So, but do you like the fact that it says select board, budget committee and department head reduce the request, or it was just reduced during the budget process?
I think fewer words is better.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
just the
Agreed.
select board and the budget committee.
Well,
I
then,
think the department head, I think if you don't put department, I like all 3 of us listed on there. Because that's more personable. It's like, who did this? The budget process sounds like this amorphous. black
There's
box
some behind the
thing.
curtain stuff going on.
Yeah, I like.
Good point, Val.
I like the first, and I would include the department heads, otherwise I think, as I said last time, I think you run the risk of people thinking, well, those department heads, they're over requesting, and then we chop them down to size or whatever. Now, I don't want to set anyone up to take the blame for big numbers.
Right.
This is a collaborative effort with the
you
department.
can just blame the town manager. She hates small
Okay.
children and eats eyeballs, so
How it comes out anyway, isn't it?
pretty much.
My worry is, like, think about the police department this evening. It started out lower and it increased. So
Right.
the average voter is gonna come in and they're gonna be like, oh.
Well, then you put another note, don't do drugs. It'll lower your police force costs.
I didn't hear the end of yours, Peg.
That's part of the process.
You know. People know that there's a problem in town and we need cops.
Yeah.
Really.
No, I'm not, I'm actually saying it seriously. It's
Oh,
gonna be
yeah.
like the transfer station. It's gonna recycle, it'll lower your taxes.
So so where did we end up on this? We like including select board, budget committee and department head. Who likes that, including that?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
If we're gonna say anything, I like that.
Yes.
Okay, so I would say majority ruled on that. Okay,
all 3.
Mhm.
okay. So then increases
I would avoid indicating
what the original request
what the
was.
original about, well,
I
whether
agree.
it's higher or
Agreed,
lower.
agreed.
Either increase or decrease.
Yeah, correct.
No, what you're saying is don't put in the original request at all.
Right.
Okay. We'll pretty it up and redo it and let you look at it again.
Great. Awesome.
We'll buy
That's why we're buying another machine.
There is, I will be honest, there is some trepidation by the staff of increasing the length of the warrants and potentially confusing people, and it does add another layer of a potential for us to make mistakes. Because after we've looked at the warrant for like the 6th time, you start to see things. So we may ask some of you to proofread this for us before we send it out to the printer. So we may ask you to come in and, hey, sit down with this. Could you read this? Does this make sense? Could you help us check? So don't be
Sure.
surprised when you get those phone number, that phone call, it says, and you need to do it now because we're on a deadline to
I
get
just
the,
volunteered, I heard it.
Sounds
yeah,
great.
so everybody did
I don't
actually.
know numbers, but I can proofread.
Yeah. Hey, I posted something and forgot in essence, somebody yesterday on Facebook was like, checked me and I was like, thank you for catching that, after you read something 10 times, sometimes you're anticipating what you wrote in your head.
Is everybody ready to adjourn? Would Val like to make that motion for the budget committee?
Feel privileged, to
So
start.
moved.
Thank you, Billy. Any second? All right, we got lots of seconds on that one. All those in favor? Wahoo.
All right, I'll make somebody like to make a
I'll make a
motion.
motion to select board to, yeah, to adjourn.
See, it's time. Is there